Jake Martinez watched the storm through his kitchen window as rain hammered against the glass. Lightning split the dark sky every few seconds, and thunder rolled across the Montana hills like angry giants walking the earth. He had seen many storms in his 34 years, but this one felt different. The Weather Service had called it the worst storm system to hit the region in over 50 years. His coffee mug sat empty on the counter next to medical supplies he kept ready for emergencies. Being the only veterinarian within 100 miles meant Jake never knew when someone might need help with their animals. The old ranch house creaked and groaned as wind pushed against its wooden walls. His grandfather had built this place to last, but even solid. Construction had limits. The lights flickered twice, then went out completely. Jake felt around in the darkness until he found his flashlight. The beam cut through the black interior as he made his way to check on his own animals. His 3 horses stood quietly in the barn, looking nervous but safe. The chickens huddled together in their coop, making soft, worried sounds. Everything seemed secure enough to ride out the storm. Jake returned to the house and tried to read by flashlight, but the constant noise made concentration impossible. Every crash of thunder seemed to shake the ground beneath his feet. Around midnight, the storm reached its peak with lightning strikes, so close together they turned night into flickering day. Then somewhere past 2 in the morning, he heard something that made his blood freeze. A sound like a mountain falling cut through even the storm noise. It came from somewhere behind the house toward the back pasture. Jake grabbed his flashlight and emergency medical kit without thinking. His veterinarian instincts told him something was hurt and needed help, even though his common sense said to stay inside during such dangerous weather. He pushed through the wind and rain toward the sound. Tree branches whipped around him, and mud sucked at his boots with every step. The flashlight beam barely penetrated the sheets of rain, but he kept walking. Lightning showed him glimpses of his familiar land, looking alien and threatening in the storm. When Jake reached the back pasture, he stopped and stared. A massive crater had been carved into the earth, as if something huge had fallen from the sky. Twisted metal and strange glowing fragments lay scattered around the impact site. But what made Jake forget about the rain soaking through his clothes was the creature lying motionless in the center of the crater. It looked like a dragon from old stories, but real and solid and clearly alive. Metallic scales covered its body in patterns that seemed to shift and change even in the weak flashlight beam. The creature was easily 30 feet long, with wings folded against its sides and a long neck that ended in a head full of sharp teeth. Soft blue lights pulsed under its scales like a slow heartbeat. Jake should have been afraid. Every survival instinct told him to run back to the house and call someone. But the creature was making sounds that any veterinarian would recognize. It was in pain. Deep groaning noises came from its throat, and its whole body trembled. One massive eye opened and looked directly at Jake with an intelligence that was clearly not animal. The creature tried to lift its head, but fell back with what sounded almost like a whimper. Jake could see now that blood ran from its ears and nose. The blue lights under its scales flickered weakly. Whatever this thing was, it needed help, and Jake was the only one here to give it. He approached slowly with his hands visible and empty, except for the medical kit. The creature watched him, but made no threatening moves. Up close, Jake could see that its breathing was shallow and rapid. Its pupils were different sizes, which meant head trauma. The metallic scales felt warm under his fingers, and he could feel the creature's pulse racing too fast. Jake had no idea what kind of biology he was dealing with, but some things seemed universal. Pain was pain, and distress was distress no matter what species. He opened his kit and pulled out a bottle of aspirin. If this was some kind of severe headache caused by the head injury, then basic pain relief might help. Getting the creature to take medicine proved easier than expected. It seemed to understand what Jake was trying to do and opened its mouth to accept the pills along with water from Jake's bottle. Then Jake sat down in the mud beside the massive head and waited. The storm continued to rage around them, but somehow sitting there felt peaceful. Slowly the creature's breathing became deeper and more regular. The blue lights under its scales began to pulse more steadily. After an hour, the trembling stopped completely. The creature lifted its head and looked at Jake with what might have been gratitude. Then it spoke. The words came out as musical sounds. That Jake could not understand, but there was no doubt they were words. The creature was trying to communicate with him. Jake pointed to himself and said his name slowly. The creature repeated the sounds as best it could, then made different sounds while touching its own chest with one clawed hand. They sat together through the rest of the storm as dawn slowly lightened the eastern sky. Jake dozed fitfully against the warm scales while the creature kept watch. When he woke, the sun was shining and the mysterious dragon was looking much better. It had pulled some kind of device from among the wreckage and was speaking into it in that same musical language. Device began to glow, and suddenly the creature's voice changed. The words were still strange, but Jake could almost understand them as if someone was translating in his head. The meaning became clearer with each sentence the creature spoke. Thank you for helping the human Jake Martinez. My name translates to Skyweaver Kira in your language. You have shown great kindness to a stranger, and I will not forget this gift you have given me. Jake stared at the talking dragon and wondered if his quiet life as a country veterinarian was about to become much more complicated. Jake sat in stunned silence as the reality of talking to a dragon slowly sank in. Kira watched him with large golden eyes that held an intelligence far beyond any animal he had ever treated. The universal translator device in her clawed hand glowed softly as she waited for him to process what was happening. You are not afraid of me, Kira said with what sounded like curiosity. This surprises me greatly. My kind appears fearsome to most species we encounter. Jake found his voice. Finally, you were hurt and needed help. That matters more than what you look like. He gestured toward her head where the bleeding had stopped. How are you feeling now? Any dizziness or blurred vision? Kira tilted her massive head thoughtfully. The pain is much less. Your medicine worked better than I expected. What did you give me? Just aspirin, basic pain relief that works on headaches. Jake stood up and brushed mud from his clothes. Can you tell me what happened to you? That crater looks like you fell from a very high place. I crashed during your storm. My scout ship was damaged by the electrical interference, and I lost control. Kira gestured with one wing toward the scattered wreckage. The electromagnetic pulses from your lightning strikes disrupted my navigation systems and caused severe pain in my neural centers. Jake nodded as if talking to crash-landed aliens was something he did every morning. Scout ship. So you're exploring our planet? Kira's expression changed, and she looked away from Jake toward the horizon. I was conducting reconnaissance before the arrival of the main fleet. My people are part of something called the Stellar Confederation. We received intelligence that your species had become a potential threat to galactic stability. A threat? Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with his wet clothes. What kind of threat? Your rapid technological advancement and expansion into space concerned certain members of the Confederation. The Zephyrian Empire convinced the Council that humans were inherently violent and would eventually pose a danger to peaceful species. Kira looked back at Jake with what might have been regret. I was sent to confirm these assessments before the invasion fleet arrived. Jake sat down hard on a piece of twisted metal. Invasion fleet? You mean your people are planning to attack Earth? The plan was to contain your species before you could spread beyond your home system. The Zephyrians presented evidence of your wars and conflicts is proof that humans could not be trusted with advanced technology. Kira moved closer to Jake and lowered her great head to his eye level. But their intelligence was incomplete. You have shown me something that contradicts everything I was told about your kind. What do you mean? You helped me when I was vulnerable, and you had every reason to fear me. You gave me medicine and stayed with me through the storm, even though you knew nothing about me or my intentions. The Zephyrians said humans only showed kindness to their own species and viewed all others as enemies to be destroyed or enslaved. Jake thought about this for a long moment. Well, they were wrong about that. Would you like to see more of what humans are really like? Over the next several hours, Jake showed Kira around his ranch and explained his work as a veterinarian. She was fascinated by everything she saw. The idea that humans would dedicate their lives to caring for other species amazed her. She watched in wonder as Jake checked on his horses and treated a chicken with an injured wing. These creatures provide you with no military advantage, Kira observed as Jake bandaged the chicken's wing. Yet you spend resources and time ensuring their health and comfort. Why? Because they depend on us and they feel pain just like we do. Taking care of them is the right thing to do. Jake released the chicken back to the coop where it rejoined the flock. Don't your people have pets or farm animals? The concept exists, but it is viewed as a weakness by species like the Zephyrians. They believe that caring for inferior beings makes a species soft and vulnerable. Kira stretched her wings in the morning sunlight. I am beginning to think they understand very little about strength. Jake showed her photos on his phone of the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center he volunteered at on weekends. Kira stared at images of humans nursing injured wild animals back to health, only to release them back into nature with no expectation of reward or benefit. This makes no logical sense from a survival perspective, she said slowly. Yet it speaks of a kind of honor that the Confederation has never encountered before. Maybe survival isn't just about being the strongest or most aggressive. Maybe it's about making sure everyone survives together. Jake put his phone away and looked up at his new alien friend. When is this invasion fleet supposed to arrive? Kira consulted a device on her wrist that displayed symbols Jake couldn't read. Tomorrow at dawn, they will begin landing operations. Ground forces will secure key locations while the main fleet establishes orbital control. Can you contact them? Tell them what you've learned about us? I can try, but the Zephyrians hold significant influence in the Confederation military command. They may not believe reports that contradict their established intelligence. Kira's scales darkened with what Jake was learning to recognize as distress. There is something else you should know. The landing zones have already been selected and assault teams assigned to each sector. What does that mean exactly? It means a squad of Zephyrian paratroopers has been specifically tasked with finding me and securing this location. They will arrive tomorrow, expecting to find me dead or captured. Instead, they will find me healthy and in the company of the human who saved my life. Jake felt his stomach drop. How do you think they'll react to that? Zephyrian soldiers are trained to follow orders without question. Their orders are to eliminate any human resistance and secure alien technology. They will not understand why I am defending a human instead of completing my mission. Kira looked directly into Jake's eyes. I will not let them harm you, Jake Martinez. You showed mercy to a stranger, and I will honor that gift with my life if necessary. Maybe we can find another way. If we explain what really happened and show them that humans aren't what they think we are. Kira made a sound that might have been laughter. You would try to show kindness to soldiers who come here to capture or kill you. If it might save lives on both sides, then yes. That's what humans do when we're at our best. We try to find solutions that don't require anyone to die. The Zephyrians will not understand this approach. Their culture values strength above all else, and they view mercy as weakness. Jake stood up and looked toward the house where his quiet life as a country veterinarian was about to end. Then I guess we'll have to show them what real strength looks like. As the sun climbed higher in the clear post-storm sky, Jake and Kira prepared for visitors who would arrive with weapons and hostility. But Jake had something the Zephyrians wouldn't expect. He had aspirin and bandages, and the stubborn human belief that even enemies could become friends if you treated them with enough kindness and respect. Kira watched him gather medical supplies and food with growing amazement. Her new human friend was preparing to show mercy to soldiers who were coming to destroy him. Either Jake Martinez was the bravest being she had ever met, or humans were far stranger than any intelligence report had suggested. Possibly both. Jake woke before dawn to the sound of Kira's low, warning growl. Through his bedroom window, he could see strange lights moving across the sky like falling stars, but these stars were slowing down as they approached the ground. The invasion had begun. He dressed quickly and grabbed his medical kit along with the thermos of coffee and sandwiches he had prepared the night before. Kira waited for him in the yard, with her scales glowing brighter than usual and her wings half spread in a defensive posture. 6 dropships incoming to this location, she reported while studying a small device. Standard Zephyrian assault configuration with full combat squad. They will establish a perimeter and advance cautiously, expecting resistance. Jake felt his heart hammering, but kept his voice steady. Are you sure about this plan? No human Jake Martinez? I am not sure about anything anymore. Kira looked down at him with those golden eyes that had become familiar overnight. But I know that you saved my life when you had no reason to trust me. Now I will stand beside you no matter what comes. The first dropship landed behind the barn with a roar of engines and a cloud of dust. Jake could hear mechanical sounds as ramps lowered and boots hit the ground. Sharp commands in an alien language echoed across his property as soldiers spread out to secure the area. 3 more ships landed around the house, creating a perfect tactical perimeter. Jake had to admire their efficiency, even as armed figures in dark armor began moving through his pastures. The soldiers were humanoid, but taller than humans, with broader shoulders and faces hidden behind helmets that reflected the morning light. Contact established with downed scout, a voice called out in accented English. Target appears to be alive and mobile, but in proximity to unknown human. A figure emerged from behind the barn, carrying what was obviously a weapon, though Jake had never seen anything like it before. The soldier was clearly female, based on her voice and build, but the armor made her look like a mechanical warrior from a science fiction movie. I am Commander Zara Vex of the Zephyrian Expeditionary Force, the soldier announced as she approached with her weapon lowered but ready. Scout Kira, you will report your status immediately. Kira stepped forward, placing herself between Jake and the commander. Commander Vex, I am uninjured and operational. This human provided medical assistance after my crash and is under my protection. The commander stopped walking and tilted her helmeted head. Repeat your last statement, Scout. Did you say this human is under your protection? That is correct. Commander, Jake Martinez showed mercy to me when I was vulnerable and in pain. He treated my injuries and asked for nothing in return. I owe him a life debt according to our oldest traditions. Jake could see more soldiers moving into position around the yard. They kept their weapons pointed down, but their body language showed they were ready for trouble. He stepped forward slowly with his hands visible and empty, except for the thermos and bag of food. Commander Vex, Jake said politely, I know this situation looks strange to you, but I'd like to offer you and your soldiers some coffee and breakfast. It's been a long night for everyone. The commander stared at Jake through her helmet visor for a long moment. Human, you are aware that we are here to arrest you as a potential threat to galactic security? Kira explained the situation to me. I understand you have concerns about my species, based on incomplete information. I was hoping we could talk about that over a meal. Jake held up the thermos. Coffee is a human tradition for starting difficult conversations. This is highly irregular, Commander Vex said, but Jake noticed she had not raised her weapon. Scout Kira, why are you defending this human? Your mission parameters clearly state that contact with natives should be limited to intelligence gathering. My mission parameters also require me to report accurate intelligence. Everything we were told about human behavior has been contradicted by my experiences with Jake Martinez. Kira moved closer to Jake in a gesture of unmistakable protection. He shows compassion to creatures that cannot benefit him. He risked his safety to help a stranger who could have been dangerous. These are not the actions of a violent species interested only in conquest. One of the other soldiers called out from near the house. Commander, we have reports from other landing zones of similar anomalies. Multiple humans are attempting to provide aid to our forces instead of offering resistance. Commander Vex raised her hand to her helmet, apparently receiving communications from elsewhere. Jake could hear fragments of conversation in the alien language, but the tone suggested confusion rather than alarm. Landing Zone 7 reports that local humans brought medical supplies to treat injured personnel from a hard landing. Landing Zone 12 says civilians are attempting to provide food and shelter to our advance teams. The commander looked back and forth between Jake and Kira. Either this is an elaborate deception, or our intelligence about human nature was seriously flawed. Jake seized the opportunity. Commander, would you be willing to let me show you what humans are really like? I'm a veterinarian, which means I spend my life helping creatures that can't help themselves. I'd like you to meet some of my patients. Against all military protocol, Commander, Vex found herself following a human and a dragon toward a barn full of Earth animals. Her soldiers maintained defensive positions, but she could see their confusion through their body language. This was not the hostile resistance they had been trained to expect. Jake introduced the Zephyrians to his horses, explaining how humans had partnered with these animals for thousands of years, not as slaves, but as companions in work and travel. He showed them the chicken coop, where he cared for birds that provided eggs in exchange for protection and food. These creatures serve you in exchange for care and security, Commander Vex observed as she watched Jake check on each animal. This is a form of mutual benefit arrangement. That's right. Humans learned long ago that cooperation works better than domination. We take care of them, and they take care of us. Jake pulled out his phone and showed pictures of guide dogs helping blind humans and therapy animals comforting sick children. We even train animals to help humans who are hurt or disabled. The commander studied the images with growing amazement. Your species uses stronger creatures to assist weaker members of your own kind. We believe everyone deserves help when they need it, regardless of how useful they might be to society. That includes animals and humans, and I guess aliens too. Jake looked directly at the reflective visor where he assumed her eyes were. Kira was hurt and in pain. I couldn't just leave her to suffer, even though I didn't know what she was. One of the soldiers approached, carrying a field communication device. Commander, we're receiving priority transmission from High Counselor Thorne aboard the flagship. She's requesting immediate video conference with you and any humans in custody. Commander Vex looked at Jake, who is still holding his thermos of coffee and bag of sandwiches, like the most casual prisoner of war in galactic history. Human Jake Martinez, would you be willing to speak with our expedition leader? Of course. Though I should probably mention that I'm not really qualified to speak for all of humanity. Jake gestured toward his modest ranch house. I'm just a country veterinarian who happened to help your scout during a storm. Perhaps that is exactly the kind of human our leaders need to meet, Commander Vex said quietly. Scout Kira, are you prepared to make a full report on your experiences? Yes, Commander. I believe High Counselor Thorn needs to understand that. The Zephyrian intelligence about humans was not just incomplete, but fundamentally wrong about human nature. As alien communication equipment was set up in Jake's living room, he realized his simple act of giving aspirin to a suffering creature had somehow put him at the center of first contact between Earth and a galactic civilization. He just hoped. His mother had been right when she told him that kindness was never wasted on anyone. Jake found himself sitting at his own kitchen table facing a holographic projection of the most alien being he had encountered yet. High Counselor Naya Thorn appeared as a tall, graceful figure with translucent skin that seemed to glow from within, and large eyes that held ancient wisdom. Her species, the Etherians, were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful philosophers and skilled diplomats. Jake Martinez of Earth, the High Counselor said in a voice like wind chimes. Scout Kira has made remarkable claims about your species. Before I make decisions that will affect billions of lives, I must understand if her experiences represent typical human behavior or an isolated anomaly. Jake set down his coffee mug and tried to think of how to represent all of humanity in a single conversation. Counselor Thorn, I can only speak for myself and what I've observed in my community. But I believe most humans try to help others when they can, especially when someone is hurt or in trouble. Yet our intelligence reports show extensive records of human warfare and violence. How do you reconcile these apparent contradictions? Humans aren't perfect. We make mistakes and sometimes we fight when we should talk. But even in our worst conflicts, most people try to minimize suffering when possible. Jake pulled out his phone and showed images he had prepared. These are pictures from our recent wars. Soldiers sharing food with enemy prisoners. Medics treating wounded fighters from both sides. Civilians helping refugees regardless of which side they came from. High Counselor Thorn studied the images carefully. These humans show mercy to their enemies? It's called the Geneva Convention. We have laws about how to treat prisoners and non-combatants, even during war. Not everyone follows them, but most humans believe it's important to maintain our humanity even in the worst situations. Jake scrolled to more pictures. Here are relief workers providing aid in disaster zones. Doctors volunteering in poor countries. Teachers working with disabled children. Commander Vex spoke up from where she stood guarding the room. High Counselor, we've received similar reports from landing zones across the planet. Humans are consistently offering aid to our forces rather than attacking. Several of our personnel have been treated for injuries by human medical staff. Bring me examples, the High Counselor commanded. I want to speak with other humans who have interacted with our forces. Over the next hour, Jake watched as the alien communication system connected with sites around the globe. Dr. Lisa Chun from Seattle appeared first, explaining how she had treated Zephyrian soldiers injured during a hard landing. She had set up a field hospital in her clinic and refused to accept payment for her services. They were hurt, and I'm a doctor, Dr. Chun said simply when asked why she helped alien invaders. Taking care of injured people is what I do regardless of where they come from. Maria Santos connected from Mexico City, where she had sheltered a lost alien scout in her school during a riot. The children were frightened when they saw him at first, but once they realized he was scared too, they brought him food and drew pictures to make him feel welcome. She explained, kids understand that everyone needs kindness when they're afraid. Teacher after teacher, doctor after doctor, farmer after farmer, connected to share similar stories. Humans helping aliens who had come to conquer them. Not because they expected reward or mercy in return, but because helping others was simply what humans did when faced with suffering. High Counselor Thorn listened to each account with growing amazement. These responses appear to be consistent across your species despite different cultures and geographic locations. This suggests that compassion is a fundamental characteristic of human nature rather than learned behavior. We're taught to help others from childhood, Jake confirmed. Most human religions and philosophies emphasize caring for those who can't care for themselves. It's not always easy, but we try to live up to those ideals. Kira had been silent during most of the conversations, but now she spoke up. High Counselor, the Zephyrian intelligence reports focused only on human military capabilities and historical conflicts. They ignored the context that explains human behavior. Humans fight to protect others, not to conquer them. Is this accurate, Jake Martinez? Do humans engage in warfare primarily for defensive purposes? Jake thought carefully before answering. Not always, but usually. Most of our wars throughout history were about protecting our families and communities from threats. Even when we made mistakes, we generally tried to rebuild and help former enemies afterward. We've learned that making peace is harder than making war, but it lasts longer. The High Counselor was quiet for several minutes, processing everything she had heard. Commander Vex shifted nervously in her armor, while Jake finished his coffee and wondered if he had said the right things. Commander Vex, what is your assessment of human military capabilities based on your observations? High Counselor, the humans have not offered any significant resistance to our landing operations. Their military forces appear to be withdrawing to defensive positions around civilian population centers rather than engaging our advance teams. This suggests they prioritize protecting non-combatants over tactical advantage. And what of their technology level? Adequate for planetary defense, but not advanced enough to pose a threat to the Confederation fleet. However, their medical knowledge appears quite sophisticated. Human physicians have successfully treated several of our injured personnel using techniques our own medics found effective. High Counselor Thorne nodded slowly. So we have a species that possesses defensive military capability, but uses it primarily to protect others. They show consistent compassion toward strangers, including potential enemies. Their medical and social systems are designed to care for the weak and vulnerable rather than eliminate them. That sounds about right, Jake agreed. We're not saints, but we try to be decent to each other and to anyone else we meet. There is one more test I must conduct before I can make my decision, the High Counselor said. Jake Martinez, would you be willing to come aboard our flagship as a representative of humanity? I want our full council to meet you and hear your words directly. Jake looked at Kira, who nodded encouragingly. Will other humans be coming too? Yes. Dr. Chun and Maria Santos have already agreed to join us along with several others. You will not be alone. Then I'll come. Though I should mention that I'll need to arrange care for my animals while I'm gone. Commander Vex made a sound that might have been laughter. Human Jake Martinez, even when facing the unknown, your first concern is for creatures under your protection. I am beginning to understand why Scout Kira chose to defend you. As Jake packed a small bag and made arrangements for his neighbor to care for his livestock, he wondered what he was getting himself into. A day ago, his biggest worry was whether the storm had damaged his roof. Now he was about to become Earth's unofficial ambassador to a galactic civilization. But if there was a chance that his simple act of kindness toward Kira could prevent a war, then he had to try. After all, helping others when they needed it was what humans did best, even when those others happened to be alien civilizations with powerful starships. Jake stood on the bridge of the massive alien starship looking down at Earth through a window that stretched from floor to ceiling. The planet looked peaceful and beautiful from space, with no sign of the tension that gripped every nation as alien. Ships hung in orbit above them. He had been aboard the flagship for 3 days, meeting with various council members and trying to explain human nature to beings who had never encountered anything like it. The other human representatives had impressed the Confederation leaders with their consistent stories of compassion and cooperation. Dr. Chun had demonstrated human medical techniques on alien patients. Maria Santos had shared videos of children from dozens of countries drawing welcome pictures for the alien visitors. Every human they interviewed reinforced the same message that Earth was not the threat the Zephyrians had claimed it to be. Hi. Counselor Thorne had seemed convinced, but Jake could sense growing tension among some of the alien officers. Not everyone was happy about the change in mission parameters. The Zephyrian military leaders who had planned this invasion were struggling to accept that their intelligence had been completely wrong. Jake Martinez, Kira said as she approached him at the observation window. The Council is reaching a decision about Earth's status. Most members now support ending the invasion and offering humanity membership in the Confederation. Most members, but not all. General Koroth and his hardline faction refused to accept that they were wrong about human nature. They claim the peaceful responses are an elaborate deception designed to lower our defenses before humans launch a surprise attack. Jake shook his head in frustration. What would it take to convince them? Nothing. Their worldview cannot accommodate the idea that they made a mistake. To admit error would damage their standing within Zephyrian society. Kira's scales darkened with worry. There are rumors that General Koroth is planning to take direct action regardless of the Council's decision. Before Jake could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Alien voices called out urgent reports in multiple languages, while crew members rushed to battle stations. Through the great window, Jake could see smaller ships breaking away. From the main fleet and moving toward Earth. High, Counselor Thorne's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All hands prepare for emergency conditions. General Koroth has seized control of 6 warships and is proceeding with unauthorized bombardment of Earth population centers. This is a direct violation of Confederation law and will be stopped by any means necessary. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. He's going to attack civilian targets? Koroth believes that if he can force humans to respond with violence, it will prove his theories about your species. Kira explained as she guided Jake toward the bridge. He plans to destroy several cities and wait for humanity to retaliate against Confederation forces. But that would start the war he wanted to prevent in the first place. Yes, unless humanity fails his test by not retaliating even when attacked. Directly, Jake stared at her in horror. You're asking an entire species to let their cities be destroyed without fighting back. I am asking nothing, Jake Martinez. But if humans respond to Koroth's attack with violence against Confederation personnel, it will validate everything the hardliners believe about your kind. The Council will have no choice but to authorize full planetary occupation. On the bridge, High Counselor Thorne was coordinating loyal fleet elements to intercept the rogue warships, but Jake could see they would not reach Earth in time. The rebel ships were already entering attack position over major population centers. In minutes, they would begin firing on cities full of innocent people. Counselor, Jake said as he approached the command platform, let me broadcast a message to Earth. If I explain the situation, maybe I can convince people not to fight back against your forces. Human Jake Martinez, no planetary leader would ask their people to accept destruction without resistance. It goes against every survival instinct. Maybe, but humans have surprised you before. Jake moved to the communication station. Please, Counselor, let me try. High Counselor Thorne hesitated for only a moment before nodding to her communications officer. Open all channels to Earth. Emergency broadcast on all frequencies. Jake found himself speaking to his entire planet with alien warships preparing to attack overhead. This is Jake Martinez, calling from the Confederation flagship. I know this sounds impossible, but please listen carefully. Some alien ships are about to attack our cities, but they don't represent all the aliens here. Most of them want peace with humanity. He took a deep breath and continued. The aliens who are attacking us are trying to prove that humans are violent and can't be trusted. If we fight back against any alien forces, even the ones trying to help us, it will start a war that will destroy our world. I'm asking everyone to show restraint. Evacuate if you can, but don't attack any alien ships or personnel. Some of them are trying to protect us. The response from Earth was immediate and not encouraging. Military leaders demanded to know why they should trust aliens who were bombing their cities. Politicians called Jake a traitor for collaborating with invaders. Social media exploded with anger and fear as the first energy beam struck targets. In major cities, but then something remarkable happened. Reports began coming in of civilians helping alien personnel evacuate from damaged ships. Emergency workers treated injured Confederation soldiers alongside human casualties. Military units focused on rescue operations rather than retaliation, even as their cities burned around them. Impossible. General Koroth's voice crackled over the communication system as his ships continued their bombardment. No species would accept destruction without fighting back. This must be some kind of trick. General, this is High Counselor Thorn. You will cease fire immediately and surrender your vessels to Confederation authority. I will complete this mission and prove that humans are a threat that must be eliminated before they can spread beyond their world. Jake watched in horror as the attacks continued, but also in growing amazement as humans consistently chose mercy over revenge. Even military forces that could have easily destroyed the attacking ships instead focused on protecting civilians and treating wounded aliens. The tide turned when human fighter pilots began providing escort protection for Confederation ships trying to stop General Koroth's forces. Earth's air forces engaged the rebel aliens, not in revenge, but to protect the loyal aliens who are trying to help humanity. You see, General, High Counselor Thorn said, as her loyal ships finally engaged the rebels in battle above Earth. Humans fight only to protect others, not to conquer or destroy. They are helping us stop you, even though you just attacked their cities. The battle was brief. General Koroth's ships were outnumbered and outgunned once the full Confederation fleet moved against them. But the real victory had already been won in the streets and hospitals below, where humans proved once again that their greatest strength was not their weapons, but their capacity for compassion. 6 months later, Jake stood in the same pasture, where he had first found Kira during the storm. The crater had been filled in, and the grass was growing back, but a small monument marked the spot where Earth's relationship with the galaxy had begun. Kira lay nearby in the sunshine while Jake checked on his horses. The Confederation Council approved Earth's membership application, she reported. Humans will have full voting rights and representation in galactic government. That's wonderful news. Though I still think they're giving us too much credit. We just did what felt right. That is exactly why you deserve the credit, Jake Martinez. You showed kindness to a stranger without expecting reward. When tested under the worst possible circumstances, humanity chose mercy over revenge. These are rare qualities in the galaxy. Jake finished his veterinary rounds and sat down beside his dragon friend. Ships from dozens of worlds now visited Earth, regularly bringing trade and knowledge and new friendships. But Jake was content to remain a simple country veterinarian who happened to live at the informal embassy where it all started. Do you ever regret crash landing in my pasture during that storm? He asked. Kira made the rumbling sound that Jake had learned was her laughter. Never. Though I do sometimes wonder what would have happened if you had not given me aspirin that night. Probably nothing as interesting as what did happen. Though I have to admit my life was a lot quieter before I met you. Are you complaining? Human Jake Martinez? Jake looked up at the sky, where human and alien ships traveled together among the stars, carrying the message that kindness was never wasted and mercy was the greatest strength any species could possess. Not for a second. He said and meant every word.